welcome to the 44 Division podcast. I'm your host, Khaled and Sulman, and I'm joined today by my good friend and host, Sulman Huck. Today's podcast is going to be about the NFC. We're going to be talking about over-unders for the 2024 season. We'll go over each team in order of projected win total. We'll talk about some new additions they made, and we'll make our predictions if they are going to hit over or under their projected win total in 2024. We got these lines from FanDuel as of August 29th. So obviously things are going to change with some fluid situations, especially with the number one team in the NFC and some other trades that might happen and maybe some injuries over the next couple of days. But for now, we're going to go again with the lines from FanDuel on August 29th. So we'll just jump right in. The team with the best projected win total in 2024, the San Francisco 49ers, the defending NFC champs. They went 12-5 last year, and their win total is 11.5. Sulman, you going over or under on the Niners?
Fortunately, I'm going under, man. It's a lot of weird stuff coming out of there right now. So you got the Trent Williams holdout, you got this IU contract situation. I'm definitely more concerned if like Trent Williams like holds out longer term, or because he could hold out the entire season if he wanted to, or he could just say I'm retiring, right? And that kind of puts the Niners in a bind. And then it's just like a weird energy coming out of camp this year with the Niners. Like with the whole Ayuk situation as well. So it just, I don't know, feels kind of a little bit like a Super Bowl hangover slightly. If Trent Williams doesn't hold out, I think we hit right there around 11 wins. If he does hold out, I think we lose like 2-3 wins off that. And then you might be looking at just barely making the playoffs here.
I was kind of leaning towards the under for the reasons that you mentioned, but I didn't want you to think I was a hater. So I understand the energy around the team is weird. The Ayuk situation, like you said, I think we talked about it yesterday. I think the more alarming situation is probably Trent Williams and his holdout. I did not see that coming. That wasn't really a story even, until a couple days ago. So, but despite all that, I'm still going to go with the over. I think their division is tough, but I think the NFC as a whole is kind of weak. So with the talent they have, I think their defense is still going to be amazing. Obviously, they have a ton of blue chippers. We don't need to name all the stars they have on defense. I do think the Trent Williams situation gets figured out before the Ayuk situation, because obviously he's a more important player as your franchise left tackle. So I'm going to go with the over on the Niners.
Didn't see that coming from you, Khaled.
Well, I didn't want you to think I was a hater. I was leaning under, but we'll see. All right. Next, the Detroit Lions. They went 12-5, lost in the NFC Championship to the San Francisco 49ers. They look like one of the best teams in the NFC, one of the best teams in the league. This is probably one of the hottest teams in the NFL. Their projected win total, surprisingly, only 10.5. Maybe because the division is going to be tougher. I don't know. But what did you have for the Lions here?
Definitely have them going over here, because I think they got some improvement here on the secondary with like Carlton Davis, things like that. They added Marcus Davenport onto the line as well. So defense, I think, will be slightly improved. Offense is a juggernaut. It's still one of the best offenses in the NFL. So I don't see them going downhill anytime soon there. And then I think you'll see some improvement from guys like Jameson Williams, things like that. And they didn't lose much, right? So on the offensive side or the defensive side of the ball. So I think they'll be just as good as they were last year. So I think 11-12 wins is fair for them.
Exactly. Yeah, I think 11-13 even is realistic. Like you said, the offense is a juggernaut. It's kind of funny to think of a Jared Goff offense. Well, I guess it's pretty good in LA. But yeah, the guy on the screen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best receivers in the NFL. They have a great running back group. Everything is leaning towards another appearance in the NFC Championship game, maybe in a Super Bowl win, especially, or a Super Bowl appearance, at least if the Niners are on the downturn with some of the drama that they're having. I feel like this is almost too easy, but it just, sometimes it is. I don't know. But on the surface, and the fact that they were able to hold on to their offensive coordinator, who was a hot candidate in the head coaching search, I think that shows a lot of commitment. Dan Campbell is maybe not the best situational coach or X's and O's guy, but these guys love playing for him and they're going to be motivated. So I think we're both in agreement on the over here. Next, this is kind of a controversial team. The Philadelphia Eagles, they started off hot last year, but we all kind of thought they were paper tigers. They fell apart after getting smacked up by the Niners at home, and a lot of their issues on defense and on the offense were kind of laid bare late in the season. They had a chokehold on the NFC East, ended up losing it to the Cowboys late in the season, I think on a tiebreaker. And they come back with a new defensive coordinator. They lose Jason Kelce, who is maybe the best center in the league, maybe one of the best centers of all time. So their projected win total, 10.5. Where are you going for the Eagles here?
I'll take the over. I see him right there back again at 11-6 wins. I mean, like you said, right towards the second half of that season, we saw them kind of have a lot of problems on offense and defense, lose some games they shouldn't have lost, that type of stuff. But I think they're a really good regular season team. They added a more legit running back here in Saquon Barkley, to bring some more versatility to the offense. I don't think they really got worse on defense. They shipped out Reddick, but he was apparently holding out there with the Jets, things like that. So I think they're trying to they'll be fine. They'll clean up some of this stuff, and maybe it gets to them again at the end of the season. Maybe, but I think they're good enough to get to 11 wins here.
I'm with you on this. I think they've had a pretty drama-free offseason compared to the Cowboys, who are going to be next. I know Jason Kelce, losing him is going to be big, but it's going to be, I think, a lot of the same. They just have so much talent. You mentioned Saquon Barkley. They might have the best offensive skill group in the NFL, maybe after the Niners. We'll see what happens with Ayuk, but you have an all-pro type guy in A.J. Brown. You have a potential all-pro Devontae Smith. You have a guy that, when healthy, is one of the best running backs ever, which I don't think is crazy to say. And you would expect some improvement on defense. So it's a slight over. I do think they do finish 11-6 again, but I do think that's good enough to win the division, because it's the NFC East. Nobody ever repeats in the NFC East. So I think it's going to be a flip-flop once again with the Cowboys. All right. Speaking of the Cowboys, last year they went 12-5. They pipped the Eagles to the NFC East division title late in the season. I think the Eagles lost to the Cardinals and a couple other really bad teams at the end of the year there. Kind of fell apart. Unfortunately for the Cowboys, they fell apart in the playoffs to the upstart Green Bay Packers team, and it's been a long, dramatic offseason. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Dak Prescott long term. CeeDee Lamb was a holdout for a long time. He just got paid, but who knows what kind of shape he's in. Their win total, 9.5. Seems a little low, but maybe people love the drama surrounding this team. So where are you going with the Cowboys here?
I'm going over here as well. I think the Cowboys can get to 10 wins here, even with all the drama with Dak and whether he's getting paid or not. He's still a pro. He'll come in. He'll do his thing. Cowboys always a great regular season team for the most part with Dak at quarterback. They paid CeeDee Lamb, right? So Lamb's paid. Running back situation kind of weird out there, but seems like they're just gonna go with the 2015 All-Stars of Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott right here. So and I guess they got Rico out there, so we'll see how. I think the offense is going to be fine. Their defense is always top notch, so I think you can easily pencil them in for 10 wins, and maybe they challenge the Eagles here. I don't know, but definitely I can see them there at 10 wins.
Yeah, if this was 10.5, I probably would have gone under. But the 9.5, you're like, okay, 10 wins, that's still respectable. They did lose Dan Quinn, who's now in Washington. But they still have a ton of talent all over that defense. They still have Micah Parsons, who's like probably a perennial Defense Player of the Year candidate. You assume they're getting Trayvon Diggs back, who missed most of last year. And again, I think this offense, I know a lot of people love to hate on Dak, and there's a lot of reasons to hate on Dak as a playoff quarterback. But like you said, they're a machine in the regular season. I think aside from the season when he got hurt and he basically shattered his ankle, they're basically, you can almost guarantee that they're going to win 10 games at least with Dak. So it's hard to argue against that. Again, if it was 10.5, I'd probably take the under, but at 9.5, I'm going to go with the over. All right, next up, This is a really interesting team. The Atlanta Falcons, last year, they go 7-10 with the quarterbacks like Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke. I think someone else started for them at some point. They have a lot of drama around Bijan Robinson and his usage. This year, they add Kirk Cousins. They pay him a ton of money, but then they also draft Michael Penix. They make some other big additions. On the defense, they get Matthew Judon. They just signed Justin Simmons. And now their projected win total is 9.5. And folks would assume that this is good enough to win the NFC South. So, which way are you leaning for the Atlanta Falcons?
I'm gonna go over here, Khaled. I think with the additions you made right here on the defensive side, adding Kirk Cousins. Now, yes, coming off an injury, but for a guy like Cousins, I think the Achilles is not going to be as big of an issue as it would be for someone who's a little more mobile. So I think we'll see Kirk Cousins right back to where he left off in Minnesota. He'll turn these guys like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and they got Bijan Robinson. So pretty good offensive group of guys and a good defensive group of guys. I think that's good enough to get him there to 10 wins here. So that's where I see him at. Like if this was 10.5, like you said, for the Cowboys, I'd be like, okay, under for sure. 9.5, I think Falcons win the division here and they hit 10 wins.
I'm going to go under for this. I think they're going to be in that 8-9 win range. Achilles is a big deal, man. And the fact that it was late in the season, I know we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the AFC, so I might have a different opinion on that one. But that was week 1. Kirk Cousins was a little bit later in the season. He was never that explosive to begin with, and now he's going to be even slower. Add to that some of the drama with Michael Penix, and if Kirk does have one of those, because I mean he's a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but he does have those 4 interception games in him. As soon as that happens, people are going to be saying, "Hey, that Penix kid looked pretty good in the preseason." I don't like the fact that they passed up Bill Belichick. Raheem Morris, sure, he's a decent coach, but I just don't. There's a smell on this team that I'm not digging. Maybe I'm just being biased because I'm going for the Saints in this division. There is a ton of talent. Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts. Is he still a talent? I don't know. Maybe people haven't given up on him yet. I've given up on him. But the defensive additions make them interesting. But I think 10 wins is probably too much. I'm going to go with 9 because I think the division as a whole is going to get a little bit more competitive. I don't think Carolina is going to be as bad as they were, whereas basically a free 2 wins there. So I'm going to go with the under on Atlanta. I think that's the first one we disagreed on, so that's good to see. All right. The Green Bay Packers. This is another really hot team. They started off slow last year, ended up going 9-8, got into the wild card, went into Dallas, smacked up the Cowboys, went into San Francisco, went toe-to-toe with the NFC champs, and probably should have won that game. But anyway, their projected win total, 9.5. They make some addition. They lose Aaron Jones. They add Josh Jacobs. I don't think any really notable moves on defense, but I think it's more of the same, which is a good thing. They were just good enough on defense. They have coaching stability. They gave Jordan Love a ton of money, and he looked like an elite quarterback at the end of the season, not so much at the beginning. So I guess it probably depends on which Jordan Love you think shows up. But what did you have for the Packers here?
Yeah, I think they go over here. They showed a lot in that second half of the season, and I think they kind of continue that, even though they just barely missed beating out the Niners in that game. If Jordan Love doesn't throw that, what was that interception at the end of the game, they might even take that game from the Niners. So yeah, Jordan Love, I think it all kind of rests here with Jordan Love. So I think if we get that Jordan Love from the second half, the guy we saw in the playoffs, I think they're good enough to hit 10 wins, maybe 11, maybe even challenge the Lions here for the NFC North crown. I think that's the real only challenge here to the Lions in the NFC. So I think that Packers are a team to watch, and Jordan Love is a guy to watch and see. Right? Is that the Jordan Love we're getting? If they're not getting that Jordan Love, they're gonna hit the under. But I think we are gonna get that progress out of Jordan Love, and he's gonna light the NFL up again. So
I think something clicked for him. Yeah, because early on he was not doing well. I mean, I saw him Monday night against the Raiders. He was terrible, through a game-ending interception. but something happened with him in those young weapons. That was the big story, was he has all these receivers. He doesn't have a clear number one receiver, which is a bad thing, but it's also a good thing because all these guys are kind of interchangeable. And now we've gone from the conversation of what weapons does he have to all of a sudden, wow, he has a ton of weapons. He's got, Josh Jacobs, as we mentioned. He's got Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, if he can figure out this hamstring thing, which supposedly he has. So all of a sudden it goes from who's he going to throw to is there enough, snaps and enough touches for all these guys? And all of a sudden you're looking at, this might be an elite offense. And I mean, on the fantasy side, I'm not bringing up fantasy a lot today, but I feel like this guy, I mean, he's a guy that I've circled in all my fantasy drafts as a potential, Aaron Rodgers type guy where he's going to throw 40 touchdowns and 4,500 yards. I mean, I know the weather's not great there, but he does have a lot of games in a dome and on the road, obviously. So I'm going with the over as well. I do think the NFC North is going to be really fascinating between them and Detroit. And I might even give the edge to Green Bay, but I haven't looked at that too closely. But yeah, I think we're both going the over here as well. All right. The Chicago Bears. This is a fun one. They went 7-10 last year with Justin Fields. They end up getting the number 1 overall pick thanks to the Carolina Panthers. They make a big addition with Caleb Williams, who is maybe the next Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. But a generational type quarterback. There's people saying already he's the most talented quarterback in Bears history. Hasn't even taken an NFL snap yet as of August 29th. They bring in Keenan Allen. They bring in DeAndre Swift. They pay DJ Moore a ton of money. This is a very deep and talented offense if Caleb Williams is who we think he is. The defense was not great in the beginning of the season, but came around strong at the end of the season. And now their win total is 8.5. Where are you going on the Bears here?
I'm taking the under here on the Bears. Caleb Williams, yes, talented quarterback, but let's keep in mind he's still a rookie quarterback, right? It's he's gonna struggle. He's gonna have some struggles. He's gonna have to figure some of this stuff out as he goes along. And sometimes you saw it in the preseason where maybe he's trying a little too hard to make stuff happen on his own. And I think that's gonna help kind of bite him in the regular season, right? So he's gonna have some growing pains. So I think just for that reason alone, I think the under makes sense here. Like if Caleb has minimal growing pains, maybe they're staring at 9 wins, but I think it's all more than likely that they're right there in that 7 and 8 win range. And you'd really have to have like a really good clean season for Caleb Williams, like no mistakes, like no like he'd have to play like one of the best rookie seasons of all time for them to even, I think, get to 9 wins. So for that reason, I'm taking the under here. I'm not sold on their defense. That's really
fair.
the concern to me. Yeah.
I think their defense turned around when they added Montez Sweat and they finally got that pass rush. They have like an all-pro shutdown corner and Jalen Johnson. They have Tremaine Edmonds, I believe, is their starting middle linebacker. So the defense, I think, is legit. The offense, I'm with you. I'm concerned. This pains me because I do really believe in this guy and I want to believe in him. And I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy if they go, 9-8 or 10-7, end up in the wild card. I don't think they're going to win the division. I think if the division was a little softer, I would go with the over, but I'm going to go the under as well. Just right around that, 8 wins. But again, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be happy to be wrong because I really like this guy and I'm really rooting for him to succeed. But I do think, like you said, he does have a tendency to try to do too much at times. We saw it a little bit in the preseason where he's trying to do a lot of that same magic he was doing in USC, which he can get away with. He's a great athlete, but I think at some point he's going to get popped and he's going to learn a hard lesson, I think. So barely under. I'm not super convinced. It's just, I think it's kind of the law of averages, right? Like Chicago or Detroit is going to be really good. Green Bay, I think, is going to be really good. Minnesota is not, I don't think, but yeah, it's going to be tough to squeeze out 9-10 wins. But again, I mean, they play the Niners. They have a tough schedule. So I'm not super convinced, but I I'm going to go with the under here. All right, next up, the Los Angeles Rams. They were a wild card team last year, went 10-7. They went into Detroit, lost a very close game. They had a really good chance to win that game. They lose Aaron Donald. They bring back Cooper Kupp, who came on strong last year. There's some issues around Puka Nakua's health, but I think this offense is going to keep moving. And their projected win total is actually only 8.5. So is Aaron Donald worth a game and a half? Probably. But where are you going for the Rams here?
I'm actually going under here. I think Aaron Donald was a huge part of that defense, and I don't think they really have enough pieces on that defense to kind of sustain that. And like you said, right? Like you're looking at Puka's health, and you're looking at Cooper Kupp's health. I don't know about the offense either, right? Matt Stafford is like what 40 now almost. So right,
I think he's 34.
I'm not.
He's
Is
only
he that
34.
young? Okay,
Yeah, he's not
I
that
feel like he's
old.
been in the league for like 15 years, then.
I'm going to look this up because I don't think he's 40
Okay, look
yet.
me up.
He's
Okay. He's
36.
close to 40. Okay,
He's
all right. That's
36.
okay. He's as old as us, Khaled. Okay, cool. Close enough. He's on the wrong side of 35. But I think right. You gotta really have those two guys healthy. Does Kyron Williams regress a little bit? Like, I think there's just too many variables here for the Rams where I'm just not convinced that they could overcome like a loss like Aaron Donald on the defensive side. Like I think they're gonna have to win a lot of shootouts. That's gonna be the problem here for the Rams, and I don't know if they can do that week in and week out. I mean, maybe with Sean McVay as coach, they could do it, but we'll see.
All of that makes sense. I'm still going to go with the over. I believe in this offense. I think it's going to be really talented. Matt Stafford is still an elite quarterback. He has two of the best receivers in the NFL. I know there's some health concerns, but you're thinking, okay, if Puka needs some time to recover, Cooper Kupp's going to carry the load, and I think he'll be fine. He's only like 31, 32, so he'll be fine. And Puka, of course, is a kid, so I think he'll bounce back just fine. My biggest concern, obviously, is the defense, but I do think they're going to be good enough, and I think we're going to see some regression from Seattle and Arizona. So I think for that reason, I think they're going to be good enough to get to 9-10 wins. So, but I mean, not even regression from Arizona, but regression from Seattle. All right, next up, my guys, the New Orleans Saints. Last year, they had a challenging season, to say the least. The defense was okay. The offense didn't start off all that great, but finished pretty strong. They end up 9-8. They lose the division on a tiebreaker. They end up missing out on the playoffs. They don't make any major additions this year. They lose Michael Thomas, who's not much of a loss at this point in his career. They do add Clint Kubiak, who was an offensive coordinator for the 49ers, and we all know how good that Shanahan offense is. Their projected win total is only 7.5, so the experts are projecting a little bit of a drop-off. Where are you going on the Saints here?
You're not gonna like this, Khaled. I'm going under. Only because I don't know, man. Like I think we saw that line; it was horrendous, and I think they lost. What was it, Ramsick? For like he's like out for the season, so they just lost one of their key guys on the line too. I just don't know if that line has enough to protect Derek Carr to give him the ability to make the plays that he needs to make. And then we're going to see Spencer Rattler here. People are like, oh, maybe Spencer Rattler is going to be better than Derek Carr. And Saints fans will find out real quick. He probably isn't. So for those reasons, I'm going to say the line is a big concern. Defense was just mediocre. I put him here around 6-7 wins. I think I would say 7 wins is where I'm heading with the Saints here.
I get it. I completely understand. I'm going to go the over. I don't think that's a surprise for you. I think 7.5 is pretty low. I feel like Derek Carr personally is underrated as a quarterback. I think that they last year, obviously their line was bad. They did make some improvements. They drafted the kid from Oregon State. I forget his name at this point. I forget his Saimata. No, that's the guy who went to the Chiefs.
Oh, was it Talisi something?
Yeah, Talisi.
Yeah.
Mwaga, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Big Simone dude, who's a really good young offensive tackle. They bring in Chase Young, who I think I know he wasn't great for the Niners last year, but I think he has something to prove. This is a prove-it deal. I think the defense is going to be better. They're not going to miss Alvin Kamara for 4 games because of suspension at the start of the season, which was a big deal because he is a safety blanket for Derek Carr. I think he has a solid offensive weapons around him. Chris Olave is a exciting young wide receiver. Rashid Shaheed is a great deep threat. Juwan Johnson is a good tight end, good enough tight end. So I think they're going to be able to challenge Atlanta. I think Atlanta is that team that just has way too much hype around it. And I think New Orleans is going to benefit from being a potential underdog. And I don't think 7.5 is crazy. I think they probably sweep Carolina, probably split with Atlanta and Tampa. And there you go. That's 4 wins. And then you got to win 4 more the rest of the year. I don't think that's much of an ask. So I'm going to go the over. I do think that they are going to win the division this year. You can call me biased or whatever, but I do think that their defense is going to be, again, good enough. They have playmakers all over the field. And on offense, I think they have enough talent to keep things going.
Yeah, aren't the Saints like your second favorite team now, Khaled?
It's my guy DC. I'm not shy about it. All right, the Seattle Seahawks. This was a team that showed a little bit of regression last year. They went 9-8, barely missed out on the playoffs in a very tough NFC West, thanks to the Rams and the Niners. They do lose Pete Carroll, who was there for, I don't know, 20 years or something. They do hire a very exciting defensive coordinator in Mike McDonald, who's now their head coach, and he was the architect of a very good defense in Baltimore. So this is going to be maybe a resurgence of the Legion of Boom, but their projected win total is only 7.5. So which way are you going for the Seahawks?
I'm going over here, Khaled, because I do think Mike McDonald is going to come in and kind of re-energize that defense here. And will Geno Smith kind of regress last year? I think he's going to get more out of his receivers this year. I think JSN is going to take a big step forward here for the Seahawks. And then, you have Kenneth Walker, you have Charbonnet. So I do think Geno Smith will kind of get back to what he was 2 years ago. And that should be good enough here to get him to 9 wins again, maybe 10 wins again. I do see them coming in second here in the division ahead of the Rams. I do like what they have on defense.
That's the key difference.
Yeah.
I think that's the key difference between you and me is I think the Rams are going to be better just because of the coach and the quarterback. It's hard for me to pick against the Rams. I think it's barely under. I think 7 wins, but I do think the division is going to be better. Obviously, it was tough enough last year with the NFC champs, but I do think Arizona is going to be a little bit better because we're going to get a full season, maybe, out of Kyler Murray. And they looked frisky at the end of last year, even though they only won 4 games. So for that reason, I think it's rookie head coach. It's tough. There's always that one rookie head coach that comes up big and has a big bounce back or helps a team bounce back. But I do think Geno is who he is. He had that one magical year, but I think last year is closer to the guy that he is, which is kind of a below average starting quarterback, maybe just around average. It was a good story, but I think he's going to turn back into a pumpkin this year. Next, Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers were a surprising 9-8. They won the NFC South again on a tiebreaker with the New Orleans Saints. Baker Mayfield was a great redemption story after being kicked around by a couple teams over the past few years, cast out by Cleveland, cast out by Carolina, kicked to the curb by the Rams after Matt Stafford came back healthy. And again, they end up 9-8 despite having a pretty bad defense, but they got a lot of weapons on offense. It seems like Vegas is not a fan of Tampa Bay going into this year, and their projected win total is only 7.5. Which way are you leaning on the Bucs?
I'm leaning over here on the Bucs. I do think the Baker Mayfield redemption story was a good one. I think he continues that kind of play. The offense plays at a pretty high level. I don't think the defense got any worse outside of trading Carlton Davis, but they added some guys there. So I do think Tampa Bay hits it again right there on the 9 wins. And they should be challenging the Falcons here for the division title. But I think right around there, around 9 wins, is pretty spot on for the Bucs again this year.
I'm going under. I think basically I think everything that you said about New Orleans, I think applies to Carolina, or not Carolina, sorry, to Tampa. I think the Baker Mayfield magic is going to run out. I don't think they wanted to pay him, but it was almost like well, we kind of have to because you want a playoff game, and even though it was against a really bad Eagles team, so I think this team caught some breaks. They do have talent on offense. I don't think the defense is going to be very good. So, and again, Atlanta should be better. I think New Orleans is still going to be good, and Carolina is going to be a little bit better. I think just because of hopefully you see some improvement from Bryce Young and some of the weapons he has around him. But I'm not seeing 9-10 wins for this team. I think they're going to be right around that 5-7 range. And again, I think the wheels are going to fall off the Baker Mayfield hype train. All right, the Arizona Cardinals. Last year they were a frisky 4-13, if that's possible. When Kyler Murray came back, they had a little more excitement to them. They showed some fight. Jonathan Gannon was a rookie head coach, and they started to play better for him near the end of the season. I think they were just kind of devoid of talent. They end up getting Marvin Harrison Jr., who is a generational prospect. Some people are calling him the next Calvin Johnson, the next Randy Moss, all that stuff. So with all that in mind, with a potential Kyler Murray healthy season and some of the other things around them, their projected win total has been bumped up to a surprising 7.5. So which way are you leaning on the Cardinals?
I'm leaning under here, Khaled. I I I don't know if we will get a fully healthy Kyler Murray season, right? I don't. It's been a while since we've seen a full season of Kyler Murray. Again, I still think not a lot of talent outside of Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. What else did they got? Right, like James Conner, aging James Conner. Um, Trey McBride, I guess, is another kind of up and coming tight end here. But I feel like not enough talent on both sides of the ball, and 7.5 might be a little, like 8 wins might be a little hard for them to come by, especially in that tough NFC West. So I'm thinking they're probably closer to a 6-7 win team is where they probably end the season. So I'm taking the under here.
We agree on that. I think it's a lot to ask. Again, Kyler Murray, like you said, he just doesn't seem to play full seasons, which is part of the package of being that small and being that reliant on your athleticism. You're going to go out and take big hits, even though his ACL was a non-contact injury. But just in general, he never seems to play a full season. Marvin Harrison, I think, is going to be everything that he's advertised, but I think it's going to take some time for them to develop some chemistry. Kyler Murray didn't play at all in the preseason, so we're going to see a little bit of growing pains with that connection. I do like some of the other weapons. You mentioned Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, I think, is a solid second receiver. The defense was okay. I just don't see any blue chippers on the defense. So they're going to kind of piece it together and see what they can come up with. But I think 8 wins is a lot. Again, with that division, even Seattle, who I'm low on, is not a pushover. So you're going to have automatically 6 games where I don't think they'll be favored in any of them, at least right now, in the start of the season. So I think 7.5 is a lot, or 8 wins is going to be a lot. So I'm going to go under, but I think they'll be, again, like a frisky 6-7 win team where they show some promise, but we're probably not getting 17 games from Kyler Murray. All right, Minnesota, a really interesting team. Last year they went 7-10 with, I think, 4 different starting quarterbacks. They had Kirk Cousins until he went down with the Achilles. Josh Dobbs started a couple games. Nick Mullins. I'm probably forgetting somebody else. They only get 10 or 11 games out of Justin Jefferson, and they end up going 7-10. They draft J.J. McCarthy, who unfortunately is going to be missing the entire season with the meniscus injury. And now they have Sam Darnold as the firmly entrenched number 1 quarterback. And we've seen that experiment play out before. So their projected win total for the Vikings is 7.5. Which way are you leaning for Minnesota?
I'm going under here. You're not. I don't think you're going to win more than 7 games with Sam Darnold as your starting quarterback. Yes, you still have Justin Jefferson. He's pretty much what they call quarterback proof. But Aaron Jones, he's going to get hurt at some point. He may not be the same guy he once was. You have some young rookie running backs. Defense, you got 1 or 2 guys there, but not much talent on that side of the ball either. So I think, yeah, 7 wins is probably right where they're at again. Even if they don't go through 4 different quarterbacks, pretty much the guys they started last year after Cousins' injury were just slightly below where Sam Darnold is as a quarterback. So for those reasons, Khaled, I'm taking the under again. And also you got the Lions and Packers on the up here, and they're going to be tough teams for them to face. Even the Bears are going to be probably
Yeah,
better than them.
even
So
Bears.
it's So I mean, you're looking at like potentially 0-6 in the division right there. So it's going to be tough for Minnesota, I think.
Yeah, I'm going with the under as well. You know what this reminds me of? I mean, it's not the same situation, but the year that the Niners lost Jimmy Garoppolo in I think week 1 or week 2, and they had, pretty talented team around him, but they end up going like 3-13 because their quarterbacks were awful, and they end up getting Nick Bosa. And I think this team might look at the JJ McCarthy injury as a blessing in disguise, because you're thinking, man, this division is crazy anyway. Got Detroit on the come up, Green Bay on the come up, Chicago on the come up. So you're like, okay, maybe we can tank a little bit here, go 3-13, 4-12, whatever it is, and end up getting a blue chip defensive player, which I think they are currently lacking. So yeah, I think it's a hard under. I'm not sure why it's 7.5. I don't know what the belief is. I know Justin Jefferson's great, but obviously he's quarterback dependent. And Sam Darnold he's fine. I don't think he's as bad maybe as advertised, but he does turn the ball over a lot. I don't think we saw anything from him out of in San Francisco. And I think he made a couple relief appearances last year. And that's so hard under on Minnesota. All right. Next, the New York Giants. They lost Daniel Jones pretty early on in the season. They lose Saquon Barkley. This was a team with a lot of drama around it last year. I was kind of surprised that Brian Daboll kept his job. They end up adding Malik Neighbors, who some say is the best receiver in this class, even better than Marvin Harrison Jr. But they still have Daniel Jones as their quarterback. And their projected win total is 6.5. Which way are you leaning for the Giants?
Definitely under. And for the reason you mentioned, Daniel Jones, like, yikes, he's looked bad. He's looked really bad. I'm not sure what the thought process was for the Giants going into the draft, where they potentially could have moved on up or taken JJ McCarthy, and gotten someone who's potentially better than Daniel Jones. I guess they paid the guy big money, and so they're like, let's ride him out another year. Let's see. But I definitely think you'll see the Giants here with the top 3 pick, and they're going to be in the running for a quarterback next year. Like, Daniel Jones isn't the answer. Neighbors, sure, he's decent, but defense is not great. And you're in a tough division here with the Cowboys, Eagles, even potentially the Redskins getting better. Or sorry, Commanders. My bad. It's my bad. Commanders.
Yeah, there you go. I might have to blur that out. I might have to bleep that out.
Yeah, bleep that out. My bad. It's super offensive.
It's
my
all
bad.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those reasons, I mean, the Giants are definitely well under that 6.5. Like, I would see them as a 3 to 4 win team for sure.
Completely agree. I love Malik Neighbors, but aside from him, you look at that team in general, the only real difference maker is probably Kayvon Thibodeau, who's a good pass rusher, but that's about it. I don't see any other stars on this team. I don't see much talent in general. They're starting Devin Singletary at running back. I know people say running backs don't matter, but at some point it has to matter if you don't have other talent around him. I think Daniel Jones is a train wreck. I think he's going to be a career backup after this contract plays out, which he got a ton of money for basically one good season in his career. I think at some point, maybe like week 7, week 8, we're going to see Drew Lock, and we might even see Tommy DeVito at some point, who people loved last year because he's a true New Jerseyan. So yeah, hard under on the Giants. Again, 3 to 4 wins, I think, is the max, again, in a tough division. Speaking of a tough division, the Washington Commanders. Last year, they were only 4-13. They were a frisky 4-13, similar to the Arizona Cardinals. Sam Howell showed some fight, but this defense was awful, and they just turned the ball over a lot. They went out and got one of the more exciting quarterbacks in the class in Jaden Daniels, and their projected win total is now 6.5. Which way are you leaning on the Commies?
Still gonna go under here, just because they have a lot of issues there on the defensive side of the ball. I know Jaden Daniels, he's exciting quarterback. I think he's good enough to maybe get him about 2 more wins here. But again, rookie quarterback, he's going to struggle a little bit from time to time. Offense is okay. It's fine. They got Terry McLaurin. I don't even know who their second wide receiver is now because they traded Dotson. Uh, Eckler at running back. Brian Robinson. So decent offense, but I think the defensive side of the ball is going to be the biggest problem, right? And they're going to have to really they're going to go down big in some of these games, right? That they're playing. So I don't think they're talented enough to climb back from some of those deficits they'll face early on. So I think maybe if they have a really decent season, it's 6 wins here for them.
I'm going under as well, but I do think their defense is going to be good. Not great. I think it's going to be good. They went out and got Jeremy Chin from the Panthers. They got Frankie Louvu, who was an underrated middle linebacker. I know Carolina, who's the next team we're going to talk about, only won 4 games last year, but that was all on their offense. I think their defense was pretty good. They had a really good pass defense, and I think those two guys had a lot to do with it. They do have 2 blue chip defensive tackles. Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen are both, I think, upper tier, maybe not quite elite defensive tackles, but I think the defense is going to be better because of the guys that they added. Again, with the rookie quarterback, he does have also that the Caleb Williams tendency to try to do too much. And he is kind of slight. He has more of that Lamar Jackson build than a Josh Allen build. So I think he's going to take a couple pops, and he's known for doing that, just taking some hits that he shouldn't be taking. So I'm going to go under, but I think they're going to be a fun and exciting team. Not quite as depressing as last year, even though last year they were kind of feisty. I like Sam Howell, and I know he's in Seattle. I was pushing for the Raiders to trade for him. I think they got him for like a 4th round pick. I was like, go take a flyer on this guy. He was a great fit. I see you laughing at me because I don't want to bring up fantasy, but he was an elite fantasy quarterback, and at some point those stats have to matter. So I do think the defense is going to be improved, but not good enough to, again, in a tough division where Dallas and Philly are going to be near the top of the NFC. And I mean, they're going to probably sweep the Giants, but you never know with these weird NFC East games. So we both agree on the under here. Last and potentially least, the Carolina Panthers. They go 2-15, which is atrocious. They should have had the first overall pick, but they had traded it already to get the guy pictured here in Bryce Young, who just looked completely overwhelmed last year. He had no weapons, which probably was part of it. Frank Reich was just not the coach. He was just not the right guy for him. They go out and get Canales from Tampa Bay, who ran a pretty good offense, which is another reason I think Tampa Bay is going to struggle because they did lose their offense coordinator. So you're expecting probably a small improvement, and I think the line agrees here. But their projected win total is 5.5. So which way are you leaning on Carolina?
Yeah, I'm gonna go under. I think they'll have slight improvement. There maybe be about a 5-win team. Again, right? It just really depends on how big of a step Bryce Young takes, but I think he'll take a slight step towards much better than what he did rookie season wise. Is he going to be put out like a all pro type of season? No, but you'll get it. He'll probably give you average quarterback play this year, and then you got to see what he's going to do the years after that. But I think really the concern is how many guys they lost on the defensive side of the ball. Like they traded Brian Burns away, right? They lost Jeremy Chin, like you mentioned, so they lost some guys there that were some key parts of their defense, and I think you'll see offensive improvements from them, maybe roughly the same. Like they'll probably regress a little on defense because they had really good defense last year, I would say. So I think that still doesn't get you that still doesn't get them anywhere. They're still around a 5-win team. I think is where I'm at with them.
I'm with you. I'm taking the under as well. Barely. The under, I think they're going to be closer to 4 or 5 wins, which I think is decent. Like I said, we will see some improvement from Bryce Young. He does have some more weapons around him. They just had one of the worst position groups or skill position guys in the NFL last year. The best receiver was Adam Thielen, who's 100 years old and is really slow at this point. So they get Xavier Legette. They have a little bit more pop, I think, on offense. They have a better offensive coordinator who was able to resurrect Baker Mayfield's career in Tampa Bay. But like you said, they did lose some big pieces on defense. I think Frankie Louvu was a really good middle linebacker who was underrated, and he took his talents, just a few hours up north to Washington. Jeremy Chin is not an amazing player, but I think he's versatile and brings some pop to that defense. They did sign Jadeveon Clowney, but I mean, he was good last year in Baltimore, but maybe that's just because he was in Baltimore. So I'm not seeing many blue chippers, and like you said, they did get trade Brian Burns. So I'm not seeing more than 5 wins on this team. I think closer to 4. So that's it for our over-unders. Pick a Super Bowl winner. We see the Niners back in the Super Bowl.
You want me to pick an NFC winner, not a Super Bowl winner? You want me to pick
NFC winner?
Man, I want to say Niners, but it just feels weird for them right now this season. It just feels off. So I'm gonna go Detroit. I'm gonna take the Lions to win the NFC.
I like it.
This is me saying it as a Niners fan. Like, it's just something feels wrong with the Niners this year. Like, I'm not feeling the vibe right now with the Niners, and this is me as a Niner fan. So,
okay, I like it. I think I'll go with that too. I like Detroit. I think they're going to be exciting. I think they added a lot of pieces, and I think everyone's rooting for them as a good underdog story. Not an underdog story because they were in the NFC Championship, but just in general as a franchise. But I think in terms of division winners, I think we're almost all aligned except for the NFC South. I think we both went the Niners. We both went the Lions to win the division. I think the Eagles as well. And then the NFC South looks like you picked Atlanta and I picked New Orleans. So 3 out of 4 agreement. Does that sound about right?
No, that sounds about right to me, Colin.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Sulman. Appreciate you, man. Thank you guys for checking us out. Make sure to hit that subscribe, follow button wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. We are on all the major social media platforms at 4040 Vision Pod.